representative for this council, and I'm also a member of the Rock Island Homeowners Association.
Happy New Year, everybody. Jim Concanon. I'm the semi-retired corresponding secretary for the council.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Michael Albetter, and I am the second vice president of the council, and I'm also the president of Lakewood Civic Association. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Chantal Jerem. I'm the current corresponding secretary for the council and a member of the Poinsettia Heights Civic Association.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Christian Gray. I am the District 2 representative, and I'm also the president of the Sailboat Bend Civic Association. Terrific.
I forgot my name tag, I realized. Karen Flipka, District 1 representative and vice president of Coral Ridge Country Club.
I'm Marilyn Romano. I'm the past president of the council, and I'm now the chair of the committees. And I'm the president of the Harbordale Civic Association.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Mary Pelican. I am thankfully another past president. Most recent, and I live in Coral Ridge. I was once the president of the Coral Ridge Association, but now the real president is over there in Green. And I'm on the Charter Revision Board, and other than that, I'm not doing anything else.
I'm Dennis Homer. I'm the council historian and a former past president of the council. I served 2 different times. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Susie Burstein. I'm the recording secretary for the council, and I'm the president of my neighborhood Sunrise Intercoastal.
And thank you. And absent tonight is our first vice president, JJ, Dr. Rader. And then Vanessa, who is our District 4 rep, are not here. They might come show up later. So with that, as I mentioned, we have a full agenda, a lot of good information. What the information presented tonight, what we're trying to do is that neighborhood presidents, you can listen to it and take it back to your neighborhood associations, because a lot of what will be presented will be coming up at future city commission meetings, and we will be asked to provide input at the appropriate time. So the more feedback we get as a council and a council leadership, it helps us make prudent statements and to help the commission make their decisions. So with that, we have a new guest with us. Well, she's not a guest, she's now our new city attorney. I saw, Sherry, would you introduce yourself? And she'd been a member of the Planning and Zoning Board for a number of years, but you just give your bio, and she wanted to come in and say hi to us.
Thank you. And thanks very much for the invitation. I appreciate it. It's a big group, and altogether, your groups are even bigger. So I'm really happy to speak to all of you and your neighborhoods by extension. I'm Sherry McCartney. I'm the new city attorney. I've been on the job for, what's the date today? Not yet a month, but we've hit the ground running. As you know, there's a lot going on in the city. I'm not new to Fort Lauderdale. I've been here since 1978. I went to Cardinal Gibbons, and I've known Michael Betta for 30 years and Karen for a little less than that. I was an elected myself. I was the commissioner and mayor of Oakland Park. And so I come to this with some understanding of what the commission needs and what they go through. And I think that's been a big help. At least it has been to me. So I welcome any questions, but basically I'm your city attorney, and I handle all matters. We have 14 lawyers in our office. It's like a little boutique law firm full of experts on things like land use. And they do great work, and I'm really, really proud to lead them. Thank you.
Thank you. Sherry, and your office and your staff. You have some excellent people, and I know they go to a lot of the board meetings and committee meetings. And as Michael and Mary said on the charter, that you have representation there. So thank you. Welcome aboard.
Thanks very much.
Okay. Also joining us next is Chief Schultz. I asked the chief to come in. A lot is happening right now. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
He's gonna talk about, he has one of his head of the investigations about the recent shootings in the entertainment district. As you recall, last year, the city commission had some concerns about what problems were happening in the entertainment district. They have progressively got worse. You'll hear about some shooting activities, most recently, one resulting in a homicide. So the commission at the last meeting, was it the workshop? I think it was, yeah, under the commission report.
It was during conference.
Conference meeting. They've directed staff to look at entertainment districts in any tool as it relates to open carry, or not open carry, but open container, outside sales, hours of operations. And that's one thing with the city attorney's office will be looking at if any ordinance changes are possible. Nothing is in concrete yet. Staff will be coming back to the commission with recommendations. And it could even include possibly curfew ordinance and change of curfew. The city manager was given, was it first reading, the what's called high impact events that the city manager can now take immediate action on during high impact events like spring break, things of that nature, imposing what curfews and everything. So I'll let the chief kind of explain all that. So chief, doing a great job, your team, your staff and road officers and everyone, and thank you for what you do.
Thank you. First and foremost, I want to start off by wishing everyone a happy new year. I have not been to this group since last year. And also, I would be remiss in thanking our community support team. We have two of the District 1 community support team, right? Go ahead and introduce yourselves and let them know how long you've been on the team.
Victoria Rodriguez, been with police support now for 3 years, Fort Lauderdale 6, and then law enforcement altogether 13 years.
I'm Judy Shelter. I've been with the unit for 3 years now, but with the city for 20 years.
All right.
And Darren, if you want to introduce yourself real quick.
Yes. Sergeant Darren Ogden. I'm in charge of the violent crimes unit, supervisor. I've been supervising the unit for about 10 years now. So, and I'm completing, I guess, 28 years.
All right, another one.
You'll hear a little.
In a moment, I'll turn it over to Darren to give you the specific updates about two cases. But let me start with what was discussed at commission this past Tuesday during conference. The commission conference discussions did come up because of two shootings that we had. One was the Saturday into Sunday prior to New Year's Eve, and the other was on New Year's Eve. Regarding the high impact, we've had on the books for quite a while where the city manager can basically designate a certain time period, but it's been specifically only for the beach for what we call high impact. In our regards, that's certainly spring break. So we normally designate it for 4 to 6 weeks, depending on the year. And events like Tortuga or Air Show, where we know we're just gonna have a mass influx of individuals on the beach. And these additional rules that we put into play really help us in keeping law and order in place. For instance, during spring break, the prohibition of large coolers on the beach. Tents on the beach. Tents obstruct not only our eyeline views, but certainly views from cameras and drones. So that's what's very important. The discussion on Tuesday would, if it goes through at the next meeting, would expand her ability to declare a high impact elsewhere in the city, such as Hemmershey on New Year's Eve or something of that nature. I do support that. I support the ability of the city manager to be able to make that call to give police and fire and code enforcement, in general, the city, the ability to handle those mass crowds that we sometimes have. So stay tuned, and if you're interested in hearing that, it will be discussed at the next city conference. In the meantime, you can reach out to your specific district electeds, and I would encourage you, maybe as a group tonight, to go with some sort of guidance or advice or what you feel would be appropriate in that regard. I was asked if I can discuss the curfews and the specifications of future ordinance changes. I, of course, will support anything that allows my officers and my team the ability to do what they need to do to maintain order. I can't endorse anything specific because obviously that gets into the business law, especially when it comes into what hours businesses can serve alcohol until. Now, you should be made aware that in the city of Fort Lauderdale, technically, a bar can stay open 24 hours a day. The business can stay open. What the prohibition is they have to stop serving alcohol at a certain time. So that's where it varies. And right now with the entertainment districts, if they are a bona fide member of a certain district, they can, as long as they have the permission granted, serve until 4 a.m. So that's what's been discussed. It was discussed at length during that conference, and I assure you it's going to be discussed at length in the coming commission meeting. So that's where all that is. I'll just give a brief overview. As I said, we had 2 unfortunate shootings. One was a few days before New Year's Eve, involved 5 people struck. And that was in the Hemmershey area. It was not inside an establishment. It was outside on the street and sidewalks. So that one was outside, and the one on New Year's Eve was also outside. It was on the sidewalk and steps portion of the Beach Place complex. So with that being said, I'm going to turn over the specifics to what he can tell. And I do need to remind everyone, these are 2 very active and current investigations. So we got to be very careful about what information we give. But Detective Sergeant will take that.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, unfortunately, we're off to a little busy year. Matter of fact, I started out the year with a full head of hair. Anybody who knows me knows that's not true. Not even 28 years ago did I have a full head of hair. But I did want to stop in to give a little bit of an overview of what I can. As the chief had mentioned, these are very active investigations, specifically the one that was downtown with the 5 individuals that were shot, but I'll get to that in a minute. The fortunate thing, if you want to call it fortunate, when you have any shootings, neither one of these incidents were random shootings. They didn't spur that night. I mean, obviously they occurred that night. But both of these incidents were ongoing issues between individuals that started and preceded that night. As a matter of fact, they didn't even have anything to do with our city, either one of them. So unfortunately that night, things culminated where people came from where they lived and unfortunately ran across each other those nights, which resulted in the violence that occurred. I'll start out with the one at the beach, which was New Year's Eve. I only say that I start out with it because luckily there's been a successful arrest already in that case. Maybe some of you have seen it. It involved a juvenile. He's been on the news. They've covered some of the I guess what they can, and that is still very open and active. I only bring it up to say that there's not really going to be much more that I'm going to be able to offer than that right now, because obviously the arrest is step 1. With all these cases, to bring them through the arrest process to the finality of the criminal justice system, at least here in Broward County, takes us about 4 years. So what happens today, what decisions we make today, what things are said today are going to be reviewed, analyzed through multiple steps of the court system. So I just want to leave it that there's at least some closure, for lack of better terms, in that case, and that the person who pulled the trigger that night is in custody and will navigate his way through the system. Second one, which obviously had a little bit more of a national eye, in that it was an entertainment area where 5 individuals were struck. That obviously on its face is terrible, and that night it was terrible. Again, that same thing that actually started not even outside of our city, but outside of our county. So this is another thing where unfortunately people ran across each other that have had ongoing issues. That is a very active, very open investigation. There is a lot of information that I wish I could share, but I can't. But there are definitely leads, very good leads that are being followed. The one thing that I can share, and it's in general, I don't like to say things that could compromise our investigations, nor would I. But at least for the purpose of public safety, I will give this little bit of information because it does put it in a little different context. The night of that evening when 5 people are shot, that is tremendous, and most people would then view that someone else is shot 5 times and hit 5 people. I can tell you that the weapon used that night was a modified handgun, and it was not shot 5 times. It was one pull of the trigger. which yielded 5 bullets being shot. I bring that up only to say it doesn't diminish if you're any one of those 5 individuals that got shot, but it certainly puts a different perspective than someone who's walking around specifically pulling the trigger 5 individual times. So unfortunately, due to the modifications of that firearm, which is illegal anywhere in the country, that weapon is illegal, but nonetheless it exists, and there's modifications that, you know, that were made that have made that happen. So the shooting itself was very quick, no more than it would have been if it was just 1 shot. So we do have a lot of leads. We do have a lot of people working on this case. And, you know, our hopes and our belief is that we will have everybody identified. We do have a lot of people that we feel that have been identified, but that's still a long ways away from a successful arrests and ultimate prosecution, which is what we all feel. But it does give you a little bit that this wasn't just somebody going down to cause problems by some random people to victimize.
And I would like to piggyback on that night when you have 5 individuals shot, and we review body-worn camera and such video, you see how quickly our officers respond. They are all trained in tactical medicine. They carry, sometimes you see on their vest nowadays, they have a little bit of everything. They do carry immediate aids to deal with gunshot wounds and knife wounds. So they started it, but I definitely want to give props, as we always do. We have Fire Chief Steve Golan here. His individuals that respond so quickly, they are the reasons, a combination of that are the reasons that 5 people were out of the hospital. I think all of them were out within 24, maximum 48 hours. Minor injuries, which would not have been minor had they not been treated immediately and properly. So that alone is a tribute to the outstanding individuals that we have serving in the police and fire departments as well. So again, probably can't answer many questions, but if someone has a specific question, we can take that.
The alleged assailant in the beach place, and is that person licensed to carry?
Well, in Florida,
He's a juvenile.
yeah. And remember, there's no requirement for concealed weapons permits in Florida anymore,
Know that
but he's a juvenile.
he was licensed to carry.
He's 17.
Underage. That's underage.
17. It's not another, oh, go ahead.
To piggyback off what you had mentioned, when Chief says the time, the first arriving officer was in seconds, in less than a minute. Our trucks were already on the road, just coming back from another call. The first arriving paramedic was on scene in it was just 2 minutes and 30 seconds, something like that. So when you look at times like that, it's unbelievable what the two were able to do together to mitigate what was taking place.
Agreed.
Okay, well, thank you, and I just want to say, you know, the mayor said nothing good happens after midnight, and he's right. Okay, I'm serious.
It's true.
Okay, but I also, whatever happens with the ordinances, okay, in the entertainment districts, we're gonna have a very vocal voice in it. And here's why, because the business owners are gonna come out. They're gonna oppose it because it's profit for them. If they lose 1 or 2 hours of business a day, they equate that to dollars. But you know what? These are our streets, not the business owners' streets, and not the gangs and the thugs that come here into Fort Lauderdale. So it's time we as a community step up and start defending our streets with working with our commissioners and the city manager and the police and fire departments.
Thank you.
Okay, Rachel. The next 3 speakers that we're gonna be going over is the board felt it was important to get some clarity. Rachel Williams is the Housing Community Development Manager, and she's gonna talk about the CDBG-DR. Marilyn knows what it is, but I'll let Rachel talk about it and give some clarity because there seems to be confusion. However, I can tell you there was very good clarification made today at the commissioner's goal setting as to how these funds are to be used, so.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me. As was mentioned, my name is Rachel Williams, and I serve as the city's Housing and Community Development Manager with that huge responsibility of providing oversight and compliance for the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery that was awarded to the city as a result of the April 12, 2023 flood. But before I get into explaining about the grant, I just want to let you know that the city does have a transparency page, which is posted on the screen. You can get there by just doing a plain word search in your Google engine. If you type City of Fort Lauderdale, CDBGR, it will take you directly to the link and you can access that information. On the page, you will find all the progress we have made so far with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and a timeline just depicting of what, an estimation of where we will be in the process. Right now, we are here. We're currently waiting on the grant agreement and and that authorizes us to go ahead and use the programmatic aspect of the funding. We got one grant agreement which authorized us to use the administrative portion of the funding, which is what we use to employ the consultant services of IEM International, which helped us with building out our, we had to build out an action plan explaining to how the city will utilize these funds to address unmet needs from the April 12th disaster. So we go to plans and amendments. You will find the documents. We recently got approval of the plan in late December, and the approval letter from HUD is there. And then here is what the plan looks like. It's a very large document. It's about 84 or more pages long. But the pages that I would encourage residents to focus on is page 49. Page 49 basically shows, based on the surveys and the FEMA data and the SBA data, where the funds were allocated. And something I must emphasize, I know that a lot of residents from going to the different HOA meetings are concerned about these funds using to rebuild City Hall. It's not that easy. There is a process that we have to go through if we were to choose that direction. And we would have to demonstrate to HUD that the unmet needs identified in the community has been met. And we would have to go through a waiver process to get a waiver from the federal government to use the funds in the construction of a place that we'll use for the general conduct of government. So it's not that easy. So right now, based on the feedback, this is how the funds are broken down. Under the housing category, we have a total of little over $40 million, and it's broken down into 3 subgroups. We have homeowner repairs and reconstruction, and we have homeowner reimbursement, as well as affordable housing development. All of these activities listed here must tie back in some way, shape, or form to the April 12th event. You can either have a tie back in the form of mitigation efforts, you can have a tie back in the form of recovery efforts, or you can have a tie back in the form of providing resources that were displaced as a result of the flood. And that's where this affordable housing program comes in. Funds can be used to do developments to bring affordable units on stream that were lost or became unaffordable as a result of the flood. And the body of the document provides additional detail. I won't spend tonight going into that, but you can go and you can peruse this document so that you can be informed of how the data was captured and how we got here. Next is the homeowner reimbursement. And this is one that I'm careful when I go to the HOA meetings to explain to homeowners that you have to be very, very careful with submitting an application for homeowner reimbursement. Because if the cost was covered by your personal homeowner's insurance, it's not eligible for reimbursement. If it was covered by FEMA or some other public source, it's not eligible for reimbursement. The only thing that's eligible for reimbursement, and you must have careful documentation, is your out-of-pocket cost. So if you had to dip into your 401k, your savings, and you can demonstrate that through your receipt and demonstrate that no other source covered that cost, that will be eligible for reimbursement. Another important factor to know and understand is that federal regulation requires us to use 70% of the funding, that 70% of the overall 88 million must go towards meeting a low moderate income benefit. And that can be achieved in multiple ways. The low moderate benefit can be an area-wide benefit. So for example, under our infrastructure projects, we could identify an area that's predominantly low moderate income. That's defined by HUD as an area that, based on the census data, 51% or more of those residents fall in a low income category. And we could do an area-wide benefit that would help us to achieve. In this category, the housing category, priority will be given to individual households that when we do their income certification, we assess their income, they meet that low income threshold. After that, once we've met that 70% threshold, then we can address other needs. So people who are not low moderate income can also apply, and those needs will be addressed under a category called urgent, because it was a disaster, so it translates to an urgent need. So I encourage you to go here and do a deeper dive in, and if you have questions, feel free to email me. My email address is rwilliams, or you can choose to use radwilliams@fortlauderdale.gov. Either of those emails will come through. Do you have any questions so far?
Quick question. So the homeowners are the homeowners that were impacted, are they being notified? Or should we take the initiative to go to the parts of our neighborhood to let them know?
You can do that too, but I've been making the rounds at HOA meetings. I either ask for an invitation or I'm extended an invitation. But the more persons spreading the word, better we get the word out. So please feel free to share the information. You can tell them how to get to the website to see. Right now, we're kind of in a holding pattern. One, waiting on that agreement from HUD, and two, we have to issue second task order to the consultant, because the consultant, this is a lot of heavy lifting. A lot of policies have to be developed behind the scenes, and the consultants are helping us to work on that. So we're waiting on those two next steps to flip the switch back on to get the work moving again. And so as the policies come into form though, we'll be doing public education campaigns. So myself, members of the consulting team will be also going around to the HOA meetings, and we'll probably be back at this one too, just to share the policies so residents can understand how the application process will work.
Good evening. What I'd like to ask is, Bill, if you can direct Chantel to put that on our website and to make sure that's there. But number two, I would, as president of Lakewood Civic Association, I want a copy of that because I'm gonna tell my editor to put that in our newsletter, but also at the same time, either April or maybe June, you come address us, please.
Please just, for the invite to the meeting, I like to have my directors aware. Just send an email so that we can go through the proper channels, and I'll be happy to.
Matter of fact, maybe there's a couple of presidents in this room here of the Northeast section, and we would, I hate to use the word collaborate, but we'd like to have a joint meeting session, and you're gonna join us instead of one, you can knock out maybe 4 civic associations, you know?
That's excellent. That's an excellent idea.
Thank you.
Before we, what is there a deadline that they must apply by?
Not yet.
Okay.
The deadline has not been established yet because we have, as I said earlier, we have to be behind the scenes developing the policies. But we have, on this grant, we have 6 years to spend all the funds.
Yeah, I want to compliment you on the work you and your consultant did, talking to various people at these public meetings, and the program, I think, is excellent. I have a question about the infrastructure portion of it. When you were explaining it, or when the consultant was explaining it to people, they explained that the infrastructure portion of it can only be for future mitigation type facilities related to flooding. In other words, we couldn't do a capital budget substitution.
No.
We're doing a stormwater management plan here, and that we can't use that money to augment that money.
Okay, so
Could
that's
you
a very
explain a
good
little
question,
about
Mary.
that?
And get into that. What Mary is talking about is what federal guideline refers to as supplanting. So if you had a capital project on the books and you have already identified a funding source, you couldn't now set aside that funding source to use this because that's illegal. But if you have a capital project that has already identified public funding, say for instance, you plan to do dredging of a river that's 20 miles long, but you only had enough to dredge 10 miles. You could go here to get the gap funding to dredge the full amount.
Okay,
But you could not supplant the funding that you have already identified for the first 10 miles.
that's great, I understood that, but the focus of the funding can't be, I don't know, we want to build a bridge or a tunnel. But it has to be that, I understood that the focus of the funding has to be for mitigation related
To flood events.
to flood events. So that's a limited,
Yes,
a
limited
area.
use.
And there are a lot of projects now that we're talking about, like for instance, the parking lot in Holiday Park, which it's a project that we're going through, but we might want to be able to identify using some of that money to do a natural stormwater management plan, which was not contemplated, it was just gonna be a parking lot. Is that the type of
Those are the type of projects. The only caveat that I would add to that, Mary, is that 70% rule, because we've been in conversations with our public works team. And they've identified some projects that under normal circumstances, they would be viable projects, but we just couldn't get to that 70% low mod benefit utilizing those projects. So because of that, it also restricts us on the areas that we can do projects.
Ah, okay, I understand now. Yeah, thank you.
Christian, and then you have further another, okay.
So, two questions. Would a seawall for a park be kind of fall into that infrastructure, just out of curiosity?
We were actually looking at a seawall.
Okay.
So it could fall under there, but there are other layers that we have to meet. Like, will that seawall be predominantly protecting a low mud income area? We have to look at all of those. So there is no straight yeses on anything. We have to go back and look at the regs. The clearest component is the housing component, but everything else, we have to look at the regs and we have to watch that gauge to ensure that we're meeting that 70% low mud benefit.
And is this separate from the stormwater pipe repair that started January 5th, that's using FEMA funding?
Yes.
Okay.
But I'm glad you raised FEMA, because something else that happens here that's good for projects that are funded with FEMA dollars, if they were funded with FEMA dollars, federal regulations allows us to use, if FEMA requires the local jurisdiction to have a match, we can use these funds as a match for that project.
Thank you.
Reimbursement. They're reimbursement funds, so they go back into the city budget.
No, not necessarily go back into the city budget. So sometimes when FEMA gives you dollars, the cities have to come out of pocket with a match. Let's say FEMA gave us $100 and they require us to have a $50 match for a total project cost of $150. We could go here for the $50.
And put it back into the budget. And put it back into the general budget.
No,
Put it back into the project budget.
put it in the
We
project
spent
budget.
it already, we did the project, we spent the 150.
No, if you would have done the project, then that would not be
It can
eligible.
only be future work, all this. So none of this is reimbursement money for losses.
No. Only to the homeowners.
That's great.
Is that
If there are no more questions.
Yeah, and then we'll end with Dennis, but I would remind you, if you have follow-up questions, please reach out to Rachel, email her, call, yeah.
I have business cards that I need.
It's just yes or no question. Is there an actual application at this time?
At this moment, no, but there will be an application once we have the policies in place.
Thank you.
Have you identified the neighborhoods that can only apply at this point, or is it citywide?
It's citywide.
Citywide,
The
okay.
good thing about this grant, the city was approved. In most instances, you have to have what they call a severely impacted and distressed area. In this instance for this grant, the entire city was identified as a severe and impacted area.
Okay, one last question.
I'll make it quick. Can any of these funds be used for beautification, maybe a grant to a homeowner?
No beautification.
Okay. Well, thank you, and feel free to reach out for follow-up, because while you're getting queued up, I'm going to have our new Stratcom director, is that your title? Do a self-introduction.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. I wasn't prepared to introduce myself, but I definitely wanted to come by. I met Mr. Brown today earlier at the Bolds meeting. My name is Kevin Polito. I'm the new director for strategic communications upstairs. So you're gonna start to see me around. I don't have business cards quite yet. Today's literally day 2. So I'm excited to meet you all. Some of my previous roles, I was with the city of Miami Beach for quite a bit of time, then neighborhood affairs team, and where I started that. And actually took a lot of inspiration from this group specifically. So I'm really excited to work with you all on the future going forward. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. And just so you know, I've reached out to the city manager and to commissioners about if they could identify a liaison similar to what Jordan is from neighborhood support to this group, if we could have a direct liaison to Stratcom, so we don't have to go through neighborhood support if it's something for strategic, and we can start utilizing our network of all the different neighborhood associations and websites.
Would that be Ashley?
No,
Would that be Ashley?
No, so Ashley is the deputy director, so I'm the director, and we're going to come up with a system to have a liaison, whether it's Ashley, me, Sophia, somebody from the team.
Her work is magnificent, by the way.
Yeah, no, she's been a huge help so far.
Definitely compliments to her.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you too.
Thank you.
Next up is, as many of you know, is our Deputy Director of the Developmental Services, Ella Parker. So Ella, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Good evening, everyone. This is like a great crowd, great friendly crowd. Happy New Year. So my name is Ella Parker. I'm the Deputy Director of Development Services. And with me tonight is Jim Hetzel, my colleague, and Planning Manager. And we're here to talk to you about 2 topics tonight. One is a half height setback requirements and associated yard modifications. And then Jim can update on our mixed use regulations effort. So I'll go ahead and start with the first. Sorry, I think I moved that too quickly. So half the height setback requirements refer to a zoning regulation in certain zoning districts in our city where the required setback is calculated as half of the building height. And therefore the yard modifications are fairly common requests during the development review process. We see a lot of these come through our planning and zoning board. And this is when applicants seek modifications to that half the height requirement so that they can move forward with a development project. And I'll go into a little bit more detail. So these are pretty much applicable to 3 zoning districts. These are our higher intensity residential zoning districts, RMM 25, RMH 25, and RMH 60. You kind of see the associated density and maximum height limitations listed under each. And then the map to the right shows primarily where they fall throughout the city. So you can kind of tell that some of the RMH 60, the more impactful zoning category, which has a height of up to like 300 feet west of the intracoastal by conditional use, and 240 feet maximum by conditional use east of the intracoastal, falls sort of, you know, that's a lot of them lie in those areas. Some of the areas include Harbor Drive area, the Point of Americas, the Galleria area, Gulf Ocean Mile, And then west of the Intracoastal, we have Port Royale, and that's by McNabb Road, and then Portside, which is on Southeast 17th Street. So the intent of these setbacks is to prevent buildings from being too close. If you know the definition of a setback, it's pretty much looking at property edges, ensuring that we have the proper buffers, provisions for light and air separation to neighboring properties. And then these are typically defined in local zoning codes, right? So the history that we were able to find on these isn't very robust. We did locate that they were initially brought into the code in the 1970s, like in the early 1970s. And then once they were adopted, it was likely to, help control building height is our best guess. And then shortly thereafter, we also see the adoption of the yard modification section, which would lead me to believe that someone introduced this and then in applying the half the height setbacks. So then yard modifications were also codified at that time. So this table actually shows the current minimum requirements for those 3 districts. And then I highlighted in blue the setbacks of the side setbacks of 10 feet for multifamily development. And why that's significant is because that basically means that if you have a building that's over 20 feet, the half the height setback kicks in. So in essence, the only buildings by right for multifamily development would be 20 feet tall. This graphic actually kind of shows them in context to each other. So like you'll notice the very bottom layer, that's the RMM 25 district. That maximum height is up to 55 feet. And then the RMH 25 is up to 100 feet. And like I said, there's this distinction in the RMH 60 zoning district that by right, you can go up to 150 feet west of the Intracoastal and 120 east of the Intracoastal. And then as a conditional use process, which is a special request in front of the Planning and Zoning Board, which is subject to City Commission call up, you can go all the way up to 300 feet west of the Intracoastal and 240 feet east of the Intracoastal. You can kind of see like in blue where you see the setback requirements. So again, in the example of a building that's 55 feet maximum at RMM 25 zoning district, that setback is about 27.5 feet. And it could go as wide as 150 feet if you're proposing a conditional use height RMH 60 development west of the Intracoastal. They're not, that's not a very feasible build out scenario, right? Like we don't, anywhere all around the city, you don't actually see that kind of a separation. The setbacks are a lot lower in average. And so this requirement is actually pretty unique.
Now, is it safe to say that when this ordinance back in the 70s was written, most buildings were being built at 3 to 5 stories here in the city?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why it's written.
That's why
it was back then, yeah. And we've grown a lot since then, yeah.
And remember, this is just the higher intensity residential zoning district. So there would be taller buildings in the commercial areas, that's always existed. But in the residential higher intensity zoning districts, that's a likely scenario. So this is a recent example. I think many of you might be familiar with it. It's the Amalfi project that was recently approved at the City Commission or approved by the Planning and Zoning Board, then called up and it didn't actually get reviewed, or it didn't get called up to, it stood its grounds, I should say.
For novo hearing.
Yes, through the de novo hearing process. It's a 22-story, 38-unit multifamily development. They requested yard modifications in the RMH 60 zoning district. Again, because this is located east of the Intracoastal, their conditional request for height was only up to that limit of 240 feet, and it was ultimately approved. As part of their presentation, the applicant showed the graphic on the left, which sort of, kind of shows how the building would be unbuildable if the half the height setback requirements were applied literally. And actually, just going back, if you look at what setbacks they're providing in that table below, for their side setbacks, they were quite significant. Like we probably, those are not common setbacks, the 69 feet and the 100 and something feet. So our research to date on sort of what happens in the urban design and zoning world is that half that is really rare. You know, I was not able to locate another municipality or jurisdiction nationwide that applies half the height setback. So they're typically another jurisdiction applied as a standardized requirement. A lot of municipalities base it on factors such as percentage of total height. Some consider the lot width, the lot depth, and then others do like an average of a setback along the streetscape or a built out line. So the next slide is just talking about the considerations that we're gonna take into looking at revising these. The city commission basically directed staff to go ahead and analyze it as to how to address this half the height requirement and then bring it back for a discussion. With the intent to standardize the setback, right? Any proposed changes, we would like to obviously include community input and stakeholder involvement. And then obviously take whatever directive the city commission gives us. Just as an example, I wanted to mention that in the Central Beach, in the north part of the beach, where the IOA and NBRA zoning districts are, we actually removed the half the height requirement when we codified the code and updated the regulations based on the master plan and set a standard setback there for the side and rear to be 20 feet. And again, you know, the analysis for this could be different. We could look at, for example, you know, if there is a setback of 20 feet on the sides, if you do request a conditional use height, perhaps it's a little bit higher. Either way, if we set those standardized setbacks, we would probably want to look at amending that 10-foot side setback minimum because that's not that big for these taller, more intense buildings. So in cases where a standard setback couldn't be met, there's some unique situations and someone can show a hardship, you know, the applicants also have the ability to go to the Board of Adjustments and request a variance perhaps. So there is kind of an out process. And I think the next steps as part of this consolidated effort will just include discussion with the commission to get some feedback. And that's my presentation. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Why did I know you'd have a question?
Oh, do I have a question? Would you characterize these recent situations where these severe reductions in side yard setbacks, like when it should have been 120 feet and it gets back down to 10 feet on several beach projects and several projects in my own district, okay? Would you characterize that as just the problem is that the lots that we have left to develop are infill lots and they're small lots, and there is no way you're going to be able to cram that amount of density into these small lots, especially when these units are now these supersized luxury apartments that are like 3,000 and 4,000 square feet. I mean, if you built the previously typical size apartment of 1,500 square feet, which is generous, okay? You can get it into the envelope. You can get that amount of density into the envelope, but they're insisting on building these super luxury, you saw the photograph, you know, uber luxury type apartments. And there's no way you're gonna be able to fit that into the box, whatever district it's in. So I would characterize this as an attempt to be more flexible on the smaller lots, which is what we have now. We have smaller lots. And so I like the idea that you're addressing it, because what's happening now is they're going to P&Z and they're asking for side yard reductions, and I've never seen them turn down a side yard reduction, never. I was like the lone vote every time, okay?
What have they turned down? I haven't seen them turn down anything.
Well, that's a whole other story. So I applaud you for taking the time to look at this and consider this, but I want to make sure that, you know, in this, we don't end up with just regularizing the situation that we have now. You want to be able to have more side yards, because now we need that for drainage. I mean, when we were giving out these side setback reductions, the condition that they had to meet was a pedestrian-friendly streetscape. Well, we all like pedestrian-friendly streetscapes, but is that worth reducing the side yard, reducing the area where you can have planting, reducing the area where the water can be absorbed. So I should keep this in mind as well when we go through this, that side yards are not only for light and air now anymore. They're for stormwater retention and absorption of rainwater. So God bless you that you're taking this one on, because this is a killer one. But
Yeah, no,
good
and
for you.
I appreciate the comments. I think that, you know, we are taking the approach that there's probably some fine middle ground here, right? Like, it's definitely not, the setbacks at, you know, just given that example of you have a 240-foot building, 120 feet. It's not realistic, and it's not even a good thing for the urban environment, right? Like, I think that when you have that much separation, I mean, first of all, it would require you to have a huge lot, and then what happens in the public realm when you have 120 feet of that open space? And it's not that it's, you know, it's not programmed, it's not developed, it's not continuous, it's just not, it's really not feasible. It's something that I think we can look at to, I think, address a lot of what you're saying, because I agree, I don't think the 10-foot side setbacks in these districts are sufficient for the high intensity kind of residential areas that they support. On the other hand, in our downtown, for example, you have buildings that are built building to building to building. And again, it's a very different context. It doesn't necessarily compare apple to apples, but you know, the intent there is that you have this continuous public realm and this experience that when you're walking block to block, and you see this in every city, it's not
Yeah,
that,
but you
it's
know,
not
that's
provided.
not neighborhoods.
No, and so that,
Neighborhoods
so
don't
I'm.
wanna see blocks,
Yes,
building line to building line.
Agree,
We agree with
agree,
that.
yeah,
It's not
I'm just making a distinction that, you
Yeah.
know, 120
That's
feet
good
in
fair,
any
but,
public
you know.
realm is very unreasonable, but there's probably some good middle ground. And if we set the standard and talk about maybe some criteria that, you know, there's a better approach here with that.
How much?
So what we need to keep in mind is this is not coming back to the commission at the next meeting or the meeting after. It's gonna be.
It might just as a conference discussion, but not as like a
Right.
rewritten code, right? We
So,
would get some feedback.
I think what we as stakeholders need to wait and see what staff comes back and presents to the commission at a conference meeting, and then formulate our opinion before it gets ready to go to be codified in the ordinance.
And I would say that if anyone, and if you wanna share this with your fellow neighbors, has feedback on it right now, we would love to hear that, because we can certainly take that feedback into consideration as we're thinking about it, as we're structuring the presentation. Here's what we've heard, here's people's main concerns. We hear a lot of it at the public meetings, so we have like I think we have a good test, but it would be good to hear back, like, well, how about this, or this works well here. Did you all consider that? So by all means, please share any of that you have with us, or just any major concerns.
I just have a little suggestion, hypothetically.
Sure.
If you look at some of the buildings that got exceptions over the years, and look at the lot next to them where someone else wants to buy a new building, and the first building is upset because they're losing their views. But why don't you look at that and see, well, if we didn't give you the exception, you had a setback, and what's a new setback would, maybe everybody would be happy now because you didn't build up to your line, and now you're unhappy when the next guy builds his building.
So going back to what I initially said, remember, you could by right develop a two-story building.
Right.
So I think we also have to be kind of cognizant of, you know, like the respective property rights and what these districts are zoned for, the maximum heights that they've had established, what people's that invested value in those lots is. I completely agree that there needs to be a better balance, and we need to address the drainage and the light and the air and the buffer. But I also feel like, again, it's not reasonable. It's like when you see this kind of problem and so many of them coming in front of these boards, it kind of is an indicator that something's not working.
When they're buying the land was valued at, oh, you can only put 5 stories. Well, they wanna take and now change their code and put on
I mean,
something different.
it's valued at what you could potentially ask for, right? Like it might not be a guarantee, but those are provisions that are allowable if you meet certain criteria. So you can go on the presumption that like, I'm going to meet these criteria and I'm gonna get it through the process, and that's what a lot of the applicants assume, and that's what a lot of the valuations are based on.
Okay, Troy.
I wanna make sure everyone understands that there's a big issue with this, with the tall buildings along the beach and these huge setbacks they have to get. But make sure you pay attention to that map. RMM 25 is probably the biggest part of this. And that's in lots of neighborhoods. And I don't understand why you're messing with RMM 25 when the real problems are in RMH 60. I mean, the RMM 25 is predominantly in our neighborhood, single family. And there's nothing wrong with 27.5 feet. I mean, building a 5-foot story building next to, in the middle of a predominantly single family neighborhood is a problem. So why are you, I guess my fundamental question is, why are you including RMM 25 in this? Because it's not the tall buildings, it's the single family neighborhoods.
We're including everything that the half the height is included in today. It's not to say that if the commission advised us based on neighborhood feedback and our own analysis that we should leave RMM 25 standards the same. That's not to say we couldn't do that.
Okay.
This is an open discussion, kind of giving a broad overview of like, where do these apply? And they apply in these 3 districts.
So you don't want to limit the scope from the beginning.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we're gonna present something similar to the commission, and I think if you all have this kind of feedback and you wanna, Troy, bring up the fact that like, hey, RMM 25 works, then I think those are the types of comments that the commission needs to hear so that we get directed to change the policy one way or another with that input.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you have it now?
Okay. Let me take you to your slide.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening, everybody. Happy New Year.
Just move the arrow over there.
Thank you. Good to give an update on the mixed-use project effort that we have in the city. So I'll give you an update on it. I was here in August giving a presentation, so I'll give an update. You might see some repeat slides in that respect, and then where we're going from here on next steps. So a little bit of background information. If you remember, our mixed-use project looks at most of it, our corridors in the city outside of our regional activity centers. So everything that you see on the map in red are major corridors in the city that this mixed-use project effort would apply. So that includes US 1, Commercial Boulevard, Oakland Park Boulevard, 17th Street, State Road 84, some of the major roads identified on it. A little bit of background information as well. What we've done from the initial outreach from our beginning of the project is we heard about some concerns with Live Local projects coming in and how this would apply to them and how we could regulate Live Local projects. And if you don't know what those are, Live Local is the state law that allows affordable housing projects to be built or mixed use projects with affordable components in it to get a streamlined process through the city and certain aspects that don't apply to those projects. The way our regulations are written, mixed use regulations would not apply to Live Local. So we're trying to fix that as well. That was some of the feedback we heard, which then initiated a conversation with our city commission to move forward with certain proposed amendments now, rather than wait for the whole entire project to get done because it's a very lengthy, extensive project as a whole. Which then we came to you with, back in August, with a presentation that included these quick amendments, if you will, or phase 1 amendments, either way you want to call it. And that's what I'm going to recap today for you. This kind of tells you on the right there the overall scope of the project. There's a lot of elements that we're working with a consultant on to develop in relation to the mixed use effort. You can see that list on the right. Everything that's not highlighted is currently being worked on now. The items that are highlighted are the ones, these quick amendments or phase 1 if you want, we've been moving forward with. And then we're going to do some corrections on clarification on text, which is on the bottom. Real quick, you probably saw these slides if you were here in August. One of these elements that we're looking at is street wall length. That's the maximum length that you can have a building on facing a street. Right now, we're looking at a 300-foot maximum with some articulation. You can see on the slide that's A, B, C, D are kind of labeled on what those elements are on shifting articulation of the building, but also looking at a maximum length of 300 feet overall. So those are some elements that we're highlighting there. The next is setback, floor plate, and shoulder height. These 3 elements, and this graphic kind of shows them all together. A setback is that distance from the podium height to the tower, the distance that where the tower can be placed. That we're looking at, what does it say, 20 feet? You can't see from here. 20 feet. And then a maximum floor plate size of 32,000 square feet, which is pretty significant. It's pretty large of a floor plate. But it's reasonable when you look at some of the projects that are being built around the city of mid-sized, mid-rise construction and what's permitted today would be permitted under this code. So we want to be fair and equitable in that sense. So we're not taking anything away from property owners. And then there's a maximum podium height. That's the parking garage podium or podium height, street wall height, if you want to call it, is at 4 stories. So that's what we're proposing. And if you're here in August, these probably look very familiar. The area where I want to focus on is the residential transition zone is what we're calling it, which is neighborhood compatibility today. And kind of looking at a transition zone from the property line between a commercial development or mixed use project and that of a residential neighborhood adjacent to it that you can see in the colors there. The yellow would be the residential neighborhood, the blue would be the transition area, and then the red is commercial development or the mixed use project. You'll kind of see more in the slides to come. Currently, our neighborhood compatibility requirements are reflected on the screen. It's kind of a wedding cake step up kind of code requirement, I guess if you will, if you want to call it that, and what's permitted to be developed when you're adjacent to a residential neighborhood. That's kind of like that step up feature. The red line kind of shows you what that is. And that red and purple or blue line are going to be in every graphic from here on out, so you can see for comparison reasons. Also the setback distance from the property line between the residential zone and the development. Right now, it currently is 15 feet before the building can be placed there. And there's landscape buffer requirements and also a requirement for a wall, a buffer wall. So we're going to be looking at those elements as I move forward on the proposed amendments.
Okay, any question?
Yep.
The residential zoning, you have 55 feet with 5 stories. That's, what zone designation is that?
So that would be a RM 25 would be one of them. RM 25, right? I think it's the one I used here. The residential zoning districts have usually 2 heights. It's either 35 feet for the RS8s, RS4s and so forth. And then the medium density, the RM 25s have a 55-foot height.
Okay.
It's pretty consistent of a building height.
So the previous picture where you had Federal Highway there and
Yeah, that's RS8. So that would be a 35 building height.
on the yellow part.
The yellows,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay, great.
Yep. And I'm gonna show you a scenario for both building heights in a second. So that's the existing compatibility. As you can see, the red line and the blue line are still shown there to give you a comparison of what the requirements are today. What we're proposing is looking at building typologies, like a building group. Like what we're seeing in construction and the trends is either lower scale buildings that are only about 5 stories or less, or mid-rise or high-rise. So those are like the 3 categories, and you'll see those in the slides. But this would be building group 1, establishing a transition zone. 1, we would increase the setback distance from the zoning line from 15 feet to 30 feet. So that's a greater setback. Also, the buffer wall requirement height would go up, so you have a taller wall height for buffer, along with landscaping in that area. And then you have basically your maximum height or a tiered system. Because of this building typology, which is lower, there's only one kind of tier, which is the maximum height of the building, which is 55 feet. So you'll see how that plays into the next grouping. The next group is group 2, which is the building typology of the mid-rise. Again, you see the red line and the blue lines that show you what was neighborhood compatibility requirements today and how it would be impacted. You got the 30-foot setback, landscape buffer wall, all the same requirements, and then there's a tiered system of stepping the building back as it goes up in height. So again, this scenario being the RM 25 zoning is at 55 feet. That first tier would be at 55 feet, meaning that's the maximum you can go for a distance of a setback distance of 15, and then you can go up higher again. Again, that blue and red line are really key to understanding what's permitted today. And what we're proposing is pretty much in line, so there's no legal issues, but the taking basically is what it's called. By permitting and plus allowing the development to continue, but we're prescribing it differently. So it's understandable from the community and from the developer what's permissible. So the second tier would be that mid-rise. Typical what we're seeing in construction trends is this height of about 90 feet, 8 stories, you could fit 8 stories in there, is your next tier.
Excuse me, is this real 90 feet or this is 90 feet and they put a crap
It's
above
the
it?
maximum building height of 90 feet.
Right, but you're allowed above it
You can have certain things above the maximum building height today. Mechanical screening could be above that, but you have to screen it. But maximum height, like that maximum floor height, habitable floor, that would be the height. So here's a scenario where it's 35 feet is adjacent residential zoning. That's the maximum height. In those cases, your first tier, your first transition is the same height as the zoning, which is 35 feet. And then you take it step back 15 feet, and then you can go up. Again, looking at that red and blue line are key in understanding what's permitted today and what we're proposing. This also has the 30-foot setback and the increased buffer wall height. So that's consistent throughout all of it. This is typology 3. This is the bigger projects that come in. With what's permitted by the zoning is 150 feet. This would be a commercial zoning district coming in with a mixed use project. Scenario of the RM 25. That's the adjacent residential zoning. You got that first tier, same height, 55 feet. You get to go up to 2.5 times the adjacent zoning, residential zoning. So you then we're going to increase height, but then we're looking at the blue and red lines. What we permit today and what we're proposing. So it's a little bit of a change when it comes into this one because we're asking for greater setbacks, pushes the building farther away from the residential, but we're allowing them to go up a little bit here as the exchange for getting that increased setback, because in staff's opinion, the setback is more important than that little piece of kind of coming up here. And then there's also a distance for that second tier. So that maximum height happens way far away from the residential zoning. So you can see from the graphic, that's kind of what the amendment proposes for the group 3, typology 3. It's technical, it's fun, it's what I love doing, right? That's my job, that's what I get paid for. The other aspect, we're looking at the frontage along the corridors. Some of the city, you might have heard, inter-district corridor requirements does not apply throughout the entire city. It's certain segments and areas of the city. We're proposing it pretty much any mixed-use project coming in would have a frontage zone, which kind of replaces the inter-district. As sidewalk widths, street tree requirements on private property. This doesn't touch the street. This is an obligation from the property line in that a project would have to give back to the city. Some clarification we're doing on some of the text in the code right now talks about single-use residential. It gets a little confusing about what mixed use can be. Can it be all in one building, which is vertical mixed use, or can it be horizontal mixed use? You have a residential building here and a commercial building here, but it's all the same development site. That needs some clarification in our code. So we're going to correct that as well. And then the way the code is going to apply to other projects, including Live Local.
What are you making it, what are you gonna define it as?
I'm sorry, well, the way the language is in there, it says that single-use residential without writing out residential use is inconsistent. So we have to clean up the language. So basically, the graphic on the right would be a mixed-use project. So they're in separate buildings. Yeah.
So applying this to Live Local. What I'm thinking about later. That's 300 feet. This doesn't apply because Live Local supersedes most local zoning. There's no application of any of this to.
Unfortunately, no, because they're in before any of these amendments are being processed.
Regardless, because of the
Regardless,
state law.
yeah, so we wouldn't be able to do that right now. It's under review right now, and of course, staff is looking at it from a neighbor compatibility perspective and applying those in our comments, so we can address some of those issues, but it wouldn't be subject to until we make the code amendment of how we regulate Live Local without regulating it. I know it's a tricky kind of oxymoron there, but that's what we want to do. So completion, where we are now and how we've gone, everything in yellow is what we're working on presenting to now. Everything non-highlighted, the consultant is preparing for us to start presenting to the public, and I'll go through the schedule in a couple of months. So the rest of the plan is we'll be moving forward and we'll be going out to the community and presenting that for input. And I'll show you the schedule in a second. So here's a little bit of an issue. So our next steps are being impacted by what's called Senate Bill 180, which is a Florida statute that talks about anything you adopt as a local government that's perceived to be burdensome or more restrictive, you can't do. Which pretty much is any amendment, any change to anything we do in our comp plans, our land development plan, regulations. It's being amended. We're hoping that by the end of June, it'll be amended. The bill creator is actually proposing amendments to his own bill. Because so many government reached out and said, it's just so restrictive, we can't do anything. And it was until October 2027. So I mean, that really ties local government on every level. Any amendment that could be perceived as more restrictive or burdensome to anybody, property owner, developer, anybody. So our approach to doing this is looking at creating an overlay district. So we would have a mixed use zoning district and we would go to property owners, or if someone came in to apply for something, encourage them that the city would rezone their property for them on their behalf. And then they would have a simpler process of approval, but they'd have to comply with our regulations. So it's like a carrot kind of with the.
Not rezone, right?
Not rezone, no, staff would process the application, yeah. But the process would be easier. It's worked really similar in Uptown, successful in Uptown, it's working great actually in Uptown, a lot of interest in, but the process has become easier for everybody, both staff and property owners and developers. And there's predictability, everybody knows what they're getting. So we're looking at taking the same approach because it's flexible and has been successful in Uptown. So we're gonna take that approach moving forward. Here we are with phase one of the quick amendments. You can see on the screen, that's our timeline. Looking at going in front of our planning and zoning board in March. And hopefully first reading with commission in April, which is a little bit later than we promised our commission, a little bit behind there. But the overall project, as we move forward, those rest of those items that were unhighlighted has this schedule moving forward, which we start to go out to the public outreach in April and May. And then take in June some public open houses for everybody, for the public as a whole. And then move forward with the approval process, which lines up with the September date that we said the scope of service as it works would be done for the project overall. So it aligns with our time. With that, I've been talking a lot and fast, so I'll just take any questions.
Any questions? Can you go back? To just the lower or the pig, go back and back.
Tell me when to stop.
Okay. I'm here. We'll just start with this one.
Okay.
Okay, let's just say there's water there.
I'm sorry, there's a what?
There's water.
There's water.
We have a lot of non-commercial neighborhoods that are like commercial, but there's water in the middle.
In between.
Okay, but so you have the property on the commercial side, butts up to a wall of water, but technically the property line is another 15 feet in there. So the water may be 200 feet. The canal actually is only 75 feet, but part of that is underwater currently. Then you have the other side, then you're 45 feet to a house. Where your line started?
So with this scenario, it's not part of this first phase effort. The consultant's looking at that for us and an analysis that needs to be done. We said, how should it be treated? Should there be transition? If there's a 200-foot wide waterway from the back of somebody's property or house, don't look at the zoning line, because the zoning line could be in the middle of the water. Do we look at it from the property lines to where the building's being placed? Because you already have a scenario. So let's take this, for example, the larger projects, you have this if you're abutting it. This kind of requirement. If there's a water body in between here, your building's way here. Does it allow to go to 150 because you're already out of that transition area? Is that appropriate? And that's what the consultant is analyzing for us now. So we might have no transition requirements if there's a water body of 200 feet or more, because that distance is already being achieved.
You're still, as a home, you're still looking into something that you weren't looking into before.
Looking in this way or looking at the transition of, I mean, you're gonna see the key is what you see in a site visible kind of analysis. I mean, if there's a greater distance here, what you see here versus what you see here is the same. We would have no transition requirements. It would be allowed to go to 150 because essentially what you're seeing is the same. Now, as far as landscape requirements, buffering requirements, so you don't see anything directly across from a site visit. That could be what we address as far as how does this area get dealt with when there's a water body in between, which I think is more important of what you're seeing as you go out to your backyard.
Yes.
And your pool deck, you might see the tall building, but you're gonna be concerned more about what you see across the lake or water. So that's what we're looking at as more important in that analysis,
In the back of the room.
Oh, yes, thank you. Laura Evans from Imperial Point. Thank you for this. I have a question that isn't related to the transition requirements, but more so the mixed use study that you referenced early in the slide deck. Could you talk about any collaboration or conversations you've had with the transportation and infrastructure folks? Because I'm just thinking of mixed use, additional residents in an already clogged federal corridor. And what may be on deck to alleviate those additional residents who would be coming in?
So that's a great question. This project does not take that into account as far as an analysis that has to be done as in regards to development impacts on transportation. I mean, that's part of our development review process overall, no matter what project comes in. Here is just establishing the regulations for mixed use development. It did have a component of looking at the streets and the cross sections and improvements that should be done associated with development coming in. Not necessarily the traffic mitigation or that would be tied to a development review of a project. So what I mean is basically with this project, we were gonna look at physical improvements along the streets, which could include bike paths, bike lanes, so forth. But we backed off of that because we have a process established for that citywide. We looked at the other agencies and coordinating with them, it gets very complicated when it talks about FDOT and Broward County roadways. Because we don't have jurisdiction over them. We coordinate with them, we look at mitigation for our city roads, because where we have the authority. But any mitigation to any FDOT road or our transportation road, which are a lot in the city, like US 1 is one. Broward County, they have their own regulations and we just work with them as much as we can. It's a hard topic to handle. We have our transportation mobility department, we have a traffic review staff in our development services department. And it's difficult because we know where our development is impacting the city. How the money gets spent when the county collected it, because I don't think they're collecting anymore, but they were. How it gets spent on mitigating it goes into a geographic area larger than the city. So we can be generating all this money and they go to improvement in Lauderdale Lakes. And it doesn't directly come back to us. It's hard to, that's been a challenge for the city since I started my profession actually in another city. It's a hard topic to get a handle on. We do our best for city roads where we have the jurisdiction and we say you have mitigation, you need to put in bike path or contribute to that or something to whatever the mitigation is identified in the traffic study associated with the project.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll let you know when there's public meetings and input. Go out to with another presentation. Yep. Thank you. I think that's it.
Follow up on that. Elijah?
Yes. Are we all gonna get this information by email?
We can share this.
See it.
Yeah, well,
We'll send it to
Susie and
Okay.
Chantel, and then you can load it on the website. Okay, Jordan. I want to talk about,
That was it, Jordan.
All right, briefly, I sent an email out to everyone already, all the neighborhood associations, but the neighborhood recognition program for 2026 is now open for the applications. Please go to the website and complete the application. Shouldn't take very long. You do need to include your bylaws and your most recent agenda minutes. And be sure to be very descriptive on your meeting information. Some people are not very descriptive. They'll say they have one meeting, and it turns out they have monthly board member meetings, but one annual general meeting. Try and be specific with that, and also whoever else on your contact list. So it's not just one contact. Because what we found is sometimes if there's any error in the contact, we no longer have a way to email them to get that out. The reason why it's important as well is because not just us, but other staff throughout the city use our contact information from this application to reach out to the neighborhood associations. You also get a few other benefits. We'll print out material for you for your own agenda meetings, as well as signage for your meetings. If you want to post snipe signs outside, we can help you get those to you. Green your routine points. I'm not the expert on it, however, you can get points that can earn you money for your association. I can get you in touch with sustainability and they can get you more information. But green your routine is a great way to get some money for your association. And also we offer parking spots here at the city. It was more pertinent before when we would have, we had our city hall, but now we don't really have city hall. However, I can still get you a permit so if you come to the city for business, I can get you a parking permit for it. But that's the neighborhood recognition program. It's going through March 1st. If you have an issue with the application, if you need any assistance, or if you need a physical copy printed out, I can print out a physical copy for you as well. And the other piece is Neighbor Support Night's coming up. So we're inviting everyone now to Neighbor Support Night. It'll be February 12th in City Hall Garage. We blocked off the street. We get a lot of city staff out here. We get vendors out here. It's a great time for everyone to come out and just be supportive and be part of the city and learn more about the city and interact with staff. We work hand in hand with CFLCA during this. They have a booth set up to help everyone register. So again, if you can make it out for Thursday, February 12th, it'll be greatly appreciated. I'd love to see more faces out there.
Susie, again, has volunteered. She's going to be our point of contact for Neighbor Support Night in our table, our booth. So how do you want to, because we're running out of time, we're a month away.
Just as last year, I volunteered last year. I'm happy to volunteer the whole night this year. Please, everyone, try to get people from your neighborhood to attend this event. It's a really fantastic event. It's an opportunity for the most amazing giveaways. You will come home with like bags of swag from the city. You have opportunities to meet the individual departments that will be on display. If you have someone in your neighborhood that might be interested in like public works and flooding, you know, there's an opportunity to go to that booth and see what they're doing and learn. Just beyond the information that we get, there's just some face-to-face contact. It's very entertaining. You can bring your kids. There's live entertainment, music, food, all kinds of things. Attend.
Thank you. Also, we'll have our new departments out there as well, so you'll be able to meet our new departments that are been really fun, capital projects and all that. So please come out. Again, Susie, thank you very much for coming out and assisting with that. And if anyone has any questions for me.
Are you doing tree giveaway?
Tree giveaway, yes, tree giveaway will be there. And Susie mentioned the raffle, well, raffle prices are pretty great. They have hotel night stays.
Frankie was the winner last year. He got good stuff.
Oh,
Did you win, Frankie?
I win every year.
Remember your first.
Someone get his ticket, then you can.
Yeah, right.
Quick question, and we need to keep moving, so.
Yeah, just real quick, cause I was, I think I got confused by your email and I was just wondering for the neighborhood recognition. If we could, if it makes sense, and I'll defer to the council and the board to align those dates, because we have to complete our application form for this kind of council March 1. And so maybe it makes sense instead of us having to fill out an application January 1 through March 1 for the city recognition and then start March for the council recognition. Maybe we could just do it one time and then kind of work together to share information with like recognized neighborhoods from the council.
Let's the board take that under advisement. We'll talk
Just
about it
right.
at the next board meeting. Great suggestion, though. Thank you. Yeah, because I know we've talked about changing some things, so it might be more easier than what we think now. Okay, thank you. Was anybody else back there? Okay, thank you. Marilyn.
Yeah, Jason, could you put back the letter? Okay, going back to SB 180. I'm sorry. Hi, everybody.
Infrastructure,
Getting back to SB 180, okay, which Jim appropriately pointed out is a bill that was passed last year. And it was originally meant to deal with getting communities who had been impacted by hurricanes back up and running and back and streamline administrative procedures and bureaucratic obstacles for those communities to get back to where they were. Unfortunately, at the last minute, these amendments were put onto it, section 28 and section 18, I believe it was, which essentially, and I'm hoping it was inadvertent and it wasn't intentional, right? But it froze planning throughout the entire state of Florida for 3 years. And it actually even went back 1 year and nullified all planning development regulations, which were deemed to be more restrictive than the current restrictions. So as a result, places, comprehensive plans that were already approved and up at Tallahassee for approval were all sent back and they said, no, you can't amend your comprehensive plan. Communities which had proposals like the one we have, which is talking about changing the development boxes and increasing the width of yards and setbacks, you can't do that. Can't do that now at all. So in this legislative session, a lot of cities joined, and we were one of them who joined in a lawsuit against SB 180. And a lot of organizations like 1,000 Friends of Florida, Florida League of Cities, the Florida Planning Association, we're all lobbying behind the scenes and actually up front to get changes to SB 180. And there's movement on that because I think even the sponsor of the bill all of a sudden got bombarded and he said, okay, I made a mistake and we're gonna try and fix it. So they're trying to fix it, but it's the beginning of the session, and this is the appropriate time to put a little pressure on the legislators to tell them, yes, this needs to be done. So Bill and I talked about it, and some of the commissioners are going up, Commissioner Ben Sorensen is going up to lobby at the end of the week, at the end of this month, and so is Daphne. Daphne's up there already.
Right.
Lobbying the legislators to do something about SB 180. So we put together a sort of a proposed resolution that we might want to send along to Daphne and to any of the other groups that are lobbying up there in Tallahassee to make changes. And it's up here, and essentially what it says is, if I may borrow yours, it's an introduction of who the council is. And we're urging all the members of the Florida legislature to take action in 2026 to fix the damaging parts of the bill before more harm is done. And we're not taking a position on any of the approaches that various legislators are taking. Some legislators are trying to just change the scope. Some legislators are trying to change the actual wording. You never know how that's going to shake out in Tallahassee. So at this point, there's no really benefit to us to take a position on any of the proposed fixes, other than to urge them to do something. Okay, and that's the tone of this letter is, we understand that there are bills being filed to amend the most troublesome parts of SB 180 and others to limit the applicability to communities truly affected. But it's too soon to provide you with input on any of these approaches that may come forward during the session. But please be mindful that something has to be done in this session. The longer this law is in effect, the more the damage accumulates, and important and necessary progress to address resiliency and responsible growth is stymied. That's the tone, that's actually the words that we put in the resolution. And while we were at it, we also decided, well, let's say something about live local. And again, we're taking a conciliatory, not a conciliatory, but a reasonable approach and saying another example of a law with good intentions and unintended consequences is the Live Local Act, whose provisions were supposed to increase the supply of affordable housing. But what several years of experience has demonstrated is that the population being served is not the neediest, and that the oversized developments are being built with no concern for infrastructure and public safety. Galleria, 2 of them on 17th Street. These projects do not really address affordability because the income limits are 120% of the median income of the county. Broward County happens to be a very prosperous county. So these people who are being subsidized with these apartments are making up to $120,000 a year, which is not your doctor, which is not your nurse, it's your doctors. It's not your nurses, and it's not your, landscapers, and it's not the waitresses and the firemen and the teachers. No, it's not helping them. So, good intentions, but the implementation in Broward County and Fort Lauderdale particularly is not working. And so, public safety, Fort Lauderdale already has a robust housing incentive program. We do. We build a lot of affordable housing, not as much as we need, but we certainly have an affordable housing program. But that program targets workforce housing and is administered and monitored by the city. The projects being developed under Live Local are serving people up to 120% of the Broward median income. And the truth of the matter is, these apartments can be rented, according to the Florida law, for up to a 2-bedroom apartment rent can be charged up to $2,800 a month. Okay, that's market rate here at Fort Lauderdale. You can get a 2-bedroom apartment for $2,800. You can get a 2-bedroom townhouse apartment in Pompano for $2,100. So what are we accomplishing here? We're subsidizing, not even to mention the tax subsidy they get tax subsidies. We're subsidizing apartments that can rent for $2,800 for people who are making up to $120,000 a year. This is not working for us. So we're urging them, at a minimum, we urge you to support the efforts to address these shortcomings, reduce the scope of eligibility of projects to those closer to the higher density areas. In other words, it's not this 1 mile from downtown that these projects can be approved. How about half a mile? how about 300 feet? Just reduce the scope of this. It's so, the scope issue works in small towns in the rest of Florida. Because you need to go out a mile in order to pick up some of the higher density areas. And this whole proposal was really geared towards the other cities in Florida who are really, really resistant to affordable housing. So, but in Fort Lauderdale, what we've done is we've extended the downtown rack densities, which are no density controls at all. We've extended them out a mile into the whole of our city. I mean, it's just too big, it's too much. So we're asking them, please rethink that and sort of pull back a little bit. And we also are asking them to think about reducing the median in the income limits to 100% of the median income, which in Broward is like $89,000. So now you're starting to pick up some of your teachers and your firefighters and things like that, people like that. And we're also asking them to require the municipalities to administer and monitor these affordable houses. Under Live Local, the developer becomes a mini housing authority. He controls those affordable units. I'm gonna rent those affordable units too. His mistress, his lousy cousin Ralph, who can't make a living. I mean, there's no control. And these are supposed to be affordable for 30 years. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, who's gonna go back and look and see who's administering these apartments? So we're making some reasonable suggestions to them because I will tell you in truth, based on all the lobbyists I've spoken to, there's very little appetite to revisit Live Local again. So saying like, we want you to get rid of it is pointless. So the people who do lobbying for a living say, okay, just make some suggestions. See if we can't push them in the right direction. So we've taken that approach with saying, you need to do something. You need to cut back a little bit. You need to think about this a little more and make it more, one size doesn't fit all. We're different from Palooka up in outside of Jacksonville. This might work in Jacksonville, it might work in Palooka, but it's not working for us. So be a little concerned about that. And yeah, that's essentially it. You can see you can read it.
It's a draft resolution. What is present, I would like to ask of the body. Normally we would give time for neighborhood presidents to take this back out and vet it in their neighborhoods. But time is of the essence. The legislature just started this week. They're in for 60 days. We don't have 30, can't wait a month and come back. So I would ask by unanimous consent of the body to allow us being the board to send this to Daphne, who is the city's lobbyist, and make sure it's in line with what they're working towards, and Commissioner Sorensen and the agenda that the commission has moved forward of priorities, and move this to the right committees and other groups, as Marilyn mentioned, legislators. Okay, is there any heartburn? Jim?
Marilyn knows we're working with me on the infrastructure. I've always got a few comments and questions. Are you open at all, Bill, to doing any modifications of the letter?
Can we get it done this week?
No, we've got to get it done tonight.
Oh, we gotta get.
He's got some good ideas. We've done this before, Jim and I.
Okay.
So what do you want to change, Jim?
Well, the sentence that begins with whether to design or inadvertently, it's all. I don't want to point fingers, but I also don't want to give people a pass. So I would just strike that whole statement.
The inadvertently? Okay.
I would just start off, this one size fit.
Take out the inadvertently,
Then
provocative.
my question is also, have we had any, or are we planning on discussing this with the representatives like Lamarca or Pizzo that represent Fort Lauderdale?
We would send it to them, and if they would want to engage us and offer to talk with them about it, yeah, certainly.
Okay. And then the last thing I had was, you said we didn't want to get into details or anything, and I get that. But reduce the scope of eligible projects to those closer to the higher density areas. Can we just say something about reduce the distance or something? The scope, I think, is the word that's throwing me here.
Reduce the distance,
Something that.
Proximity.
It's the
proximity,
distance
how about
from that-
proximity?
that we want
Reduce the
to
proximity.
tighten that circle closer to the high density zones, correct?
Yeah, that's the concept.
Yeah, so is scope the right, I'm struggling with scope, that's the area. It should be broad. Proximity, distance, something like that, maybe.
I'll find another word.
Thank you, Mary.
Proximity. I will work on that. We'll find a word, but
Okay,
trust me, we'll get a word that works for you.
Okay,
Okay.
but overall, are we in agreement to work with? Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Great work, Marilyn.
I'm gonna, no,
Yeah, his signature is missing an A, the CFLCA.
And coming next, we're gonna,
oh, look who
we're under kind of, depending on when the city cultural affairs officer that you're going to hear about moves a new ordinance for public art that Troy's going to be speaking about. We put together a committee in two months ago, this members of this body to address, Worky and Troy headed up that committee. And he's going to talk about the ordinance, and if it's agreeable, once we get the final draft to communicate, because we've had input in developing that ordinance, those ordinance changes to allow us the latitude to go ahead and communicate that to the city commission. Let's say appropriately.
Yeah, I'll be quick. I'm Troy Leggett from Meadow Robert Terrace. In October, Joshua Carden, the public affairs officer, came to us, gave us a whole presentation about public art ordinance amendments. After that meeting, Bill appointed a committee that included Marilyn Newman Bree from Poinsettia Heights, Ed Catalano from South Little River, Phil Dunlap, who works for the arts organization in Broward County, and Bill attended also. We met with Joshua in November and December. We went over everything that's in their proposal. He accepted our suggestions. It was a very constructive, positive conversation. City has a pretty tight project. He also accepted some things that were brought up at the meeting here in October and that members of the committee suggested to him. Things like there's a 7-member public arts board now that's all public arts experts. We recommended adding some citizen representatives, maybe one from each neighborhood to represent citizens to give it a little bit more.
Neighborhood districts, not each neighborhood.
No, I'm sorry, each neighborhood.
Yeah.
To give it a little bit more community input into the process, and recognition of neighborhood input. Encourage that board to maximize the utilization of artists from Fort Lauderdale and who have studios in our neighborhood, for projects that they fund. To encourage the board to establish panels when they're choosing artists and designs for projects in our neighborhood, that includes representatives from the neighborhood in making the decisions to choose the artists and designs, which they don't do now. They're also going to include the neighborhoods and the commission districts on their agendas. That's not a part of the ordinance, but Joshua's been very helpful, very receptive. We had a lot of good ideas from the committee. They're going to come out with this ordinance draft within the next couple of weeks and then take it to the commission. We're gonna look at it again, but I want to assure you that we were all involved with the process and it's been very constructive, so.
And given that timeline of when the final draft comes out for us and then going to commission, we might not have time to have another meeting in between. But rest assured that through diligent work of Troy and the committee, we feel confident that it addresses the community's perspective of this.
Thank you, Troy.
All right, so finishing up December, we have $5,403. We had some expenses from the Christmas party, but we're looking good going into this year. I said earlier, if you want to start getting your memberships in for 2026-27, go right ahead. Also, if you bring a sponsor in, your membership for your civic is comped, so you get credit for that. So I mean, you're for bringing Jets Pizza there, your civic is comped, and there so is American Republicans and a few others I might have missed. So just a little incentive put out there. The more memberships means more fun, means we could do more things, and it's a great way to help us out. So with a lot of hard work and volunteer time that goes into this board, we want to do more for you guys. So.
But if you still want to donate to $50.
Yes.
I'm serious. Yeah, no, I did. Even if your membership gets comped, please still fill out an application so that, you know, we have the correct names and numbers for for your neighborhood. Yes.
Question, were they sent out to all the respectful civic associations, the applications?
The applications, usually, when you update when you make your payments, people tend to update it, but we'll send something out to have everybody update. We usually wait till after January, because that's when boards transition and whatnot, so they'll be coming out, soon.
And what I plan on doing as president, send out a letter to all, not just the 50 that we currently have, but the entire city, and try to encourage those other 40 plus.
That's right.
You know, and if there's some hardships for those neighborhoods, let us know and we'll try to figure something out. Because we need to be inclusive, not exclusive for this whole community. Okay, thank you. There's really no approval of the meeting minutes. We'll take care of that next meeting, clarify that. Is there any old business or anything good for the?
I have one thing for the good of the group. I'm Michelle DeMaria, Croissant Park Civic Association. I'm also the president of the Fort Lauderdale Garden Club. And we do our secret garden tour. We were doing it every year. We backed up. We're doing it every other year. So it is coming up February 21st, Saturday, February 21st. The city has been gracious enough to let us use their lot for the purchasing of a couple of parking spaces. So right here will be the ticket pickup. It's 6 homes in the city of Fort Lauderdale. And if I may send something to you to send out.
And we'll put it on,
And then to put it out, I can send it in PDF with the description, but it's a great event. And just so you know, some of the things that we do, we gave out $7,000 last year and this year to local schools for garden grants.
Nice.
So we have a youth gardening program called the BFFs that are middle and high school students. We award scholarships each year, both to 40 students for Wekiva Youth Camp, which is a week-long summer camp. Also to leadership in training and counselors in training. And then we have a program at Virginia Schumann Young Elementary School and Harbordale. And we take them to the park and do field trips, but we're also doing floral design, horticulture. So it's a great program. We're a great organization, but I'd really appreciate your support in any way.
Thank you.
okay,
Thank you.
get that checked out. Okay, I have 8:15, so got a lot in, we're 15 minutes over. But again, you saw the presentations, what we brought to you tonight. If there's anything as community leaders or neighborhood presidents that you want to have presentations on, please communicate it to us and we'll facilitate getting the right presenters in and get the information, because just because you think your neighborhood needs to know about it, we might see a need for all the certain other neighborhoods. So through working together in collaboration, we can get some good presentations. And we'll just ask Betty Shirley back there any closing remarks, Betty? Because you're kind of like the monarch of this.
Oh, good. Oh, we had our neighborhood meeting last night, you know, our general meeting. We have all the officials came, you know, and there's a lot of new people coming that have moved in the neighborhood. So hopefully some of them will participate and really help more. That's the thing about it. We used to have so many people that participated.
Yeah.
I don't know whether everybody has that or not, but it's just not like it used to be.
Yeah.
You know, they want you to do things, but it takes a lot of work to do things.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Thank you.
anybody else? Well, thank you. Have a safe trip home and we'll see you next month. The meeting is February 10th here and the board meeting is January 26th.
Carlos, are you?
Thank you.